Alright, I'm back. Lunch was great, and now I am ready to show you how this lovely Saunders Waterford 638 gram paper performs. This is a cold pressed paper. Its color is listed as white. If you compare it to the Bockingford, you'll see that it is slightly off white, but this does not impact your color vibrancy. It just adds a little bit of warmth to your whole piece. I have two offcuts here. I've got big sheets of this that I use for other projects, and I didn't want to cut too wide a piece out of the sheet, so I did a long strip and trimmed it in two. So you will immediately see that this paper is much thicker than the others. This is the Bockingford for comparison. This paper will likely not buckle up on us. It might bend a little, but it won't do what the other papers did. So sorry about my line here, it's a little bit skew, doesn't matter too much. But yes, let's get right to it. Moisten these bad boys down again. My coarse, chunky, unpleasant to paint with friend. Right. Quote unquote yellow. Because this is 100% cotton paper, it lasts a lot longer. It's more archival. It doesn't have that factor, I would say, that wood pulp paper has, where it starts corrupting and degenerating over time. The surface is also a bit more robust, so even using this crappy brush on top, I mean, look at that, it's already starting to blend. This brush will not damage the surface of this paper as easily. It stands up to a bit more punishment than the other papers. And on this paper, especially this red that they have in the set looks extremely orange to me. So blending on this paper should also be much easier, because this brush, while it still damages the paper surface, it happens more slowly. Let's add some water. See the difference that a good sizing makes to a paper. Amazing. Even this terrible paint with this terrible brush flows like a good paint and a good brush would achieve on a different paper. See that nice little edge the paint's making? It's the sizing doing that. And now for the blue. See, it's easier to pick up this paint even on this paper. You can fudge the edges a little bit on it and it doesn't quite protest like the other papers did. Just gonna add some water, maybe some more of this orange red. Then I've labeled them in this direction. Mid-range. Starting with the yellow. It even looks less mustardy on this paper. I guess the yellow tint in the paper is helping this paint out quite a lot. The red. It is an absolute pleasure to paint on this paper, I have to tell you. I almost want to say having good paper for a customer's project is more important than the kind of paint you use. Obviously they're both important, but in terms of the difference in performance you will see, paper makes such a difference. It's such an important factor. Somebody once said to me, you gotta get the most expensive watercolor paper that you can afford, and while that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule, there is some truth to it. Getting a high quality paper, it will be pricey, but it will be so worth it. It will be worth your time and your money. And I mean, you can see how fast this is going, because the paper doesn't need to be handled as carefully. The paint behaves better on it. You'll save time and it'll feel so good to work on that you probably will not want to use anything else after trying out fancy paper. But do make sure that you swatch at least a little piece of your papers, all of them, so that you can see how differently the paint performs on them, because sometimes colors look way different on different kinds of paper. Funny enough, on arch paper, or arches as some people say, I find that it dulls my colors a little. It's a lovely paper to work on, but it does have this strange pitting that sometimes happens with colors that I'm not sure why it happens, because the paper is saturated with paint, but it still makes that strange pitting. But other than that, it's a very good paper. Okay, so that's it for the Pritt. Now, the Cotmans. It's actually convenient to work from this bottom corner up to the right. Definitely a dent in here after this. Now the Cotman with a crappy brush. You can see how little water and paint this brush holds by how frequently I have to go back and dip back into my palette and my water gloss. Now, Cadmium red. Beautiful. So vibrant on this paper. Now let's blend them. Sheer pleasure, aside from the brush. And now the phthalo blue. Beautiful. Another thing about this brush, I can already feel the wood starting to get soggy. It's not coated, it's just raw wood, this brush. So there's no paint protecting the wood from bursting or getting into the top of the ferrule and making the glue come loose. So this brush will in all likelihood not last very long. It only takes a couple of times of exposing it to enough water and then the whole thing will split and fall apart. That's another thing with these stiff bristles, is they get caught on the paper and they shoot paint into different directions. So this paper is bending very, very slightly, but buckling nowhere nearly as bad as the other papers. I'm just going to spritz the back, I think. And just like that, it settles down. Mid-range brush. I love working on this paper. It's so good. Some water. And then the blue. See, this is why I prefer working with heavier weights of paper, because the buckling is just so much less. And anything that makes my life easier is a winner in my book. I'm actually just gonna leave this to bleed into each other. Maybe add a little bit more red on this side, just to try and get some pure color down. Maybe some more over here. Quite like that. Right, now the Danelle Smith, Mayan yellow. I cannot wait to stop using this brush. It's horrible. Pyrrole red. Ooh. Let's add some water. Try and blend this a little if we can. I cannot overstate how annoying this brush is to paint with. Blue. Okay, mid-range brush. Oh, so much better. Pyrrole red. And now the blue. I can already see the sheer vibrancy of this paint as it displays on this paper compared to the others. The difference is enormous in real life. It's difficult to capture it on camera because a lot of it has to do with natural light. On a screen, all the light just comes from your screen. So it's very difficult to actually show someone what a piece looks like digitally, especially if it's something like this, like a watercolor, where the paper makes such a difference. But I'm hoping at least you guys will get some idea. And then, schminke time. See how little this paper has buckled since we started. When it's dry, I will lift it up and show you guys. But trust me, it's a big difference. Oh, last time using this brush. Yay! Chromium yellow. Perling deep red. And then the blue. He seems to really enjoy this paper, the Schminke paints. Now the mid-range brush. I can see a little bit of water repelling going on in the corner where I touched the paper a lot, but luckily sometimes if you paint over an area just enough, it just goes away. Some areas are a bit more stubborn than others, but luckily in this case I think the sizing is helping us. Red. The colors are so vibrant on this paper, you guys. I will bring the other ones just now and show you. You will not believe your eyes how different the results are when you use good paper. Now the blue. Careful not to get this. Just as I said it, it happened. I'll fix that in a second, don't worry. Just want to get my colors down first. I'm going to put some more red in here. And even with all this wetness, the paper is barely buckling. I actually got into this paper because the company, St. Cuthbert's Mill, were kind enough to send me a sampler pack of all their papers that they make. I painted on one little sampler swatch of this paper and was instantly in love. So good. Excuse me, that area just became a bit muddy, so I just want to redo. See with the sizing, it just acts like there was never any paint there almost. It's so good. This blue is just so powerful. It wants to take over everything. So I think I should just drip some water in and let it do its thing. Okay, now let's just put back some of this. Onto the good brush. Let me set this aside to dry. Now we have a nice big block to work with. I'm racing against light here. It is past 5 in the afternoon. Even though it's summer here, the light does run out around about 6, 7-ish. And now the red, or what passes for red in their opinion. Now the blue. Struggling to blend this Pritt paint a little. This is just such a chalky, muddy paint. Not sure even what the binder is they use in here. The packet has no ingredients, so I don't know what it is even that I'm painting with. Okay, and now the Cotmans. And the red. Wow, so vibrant. This brush is way too small for what I'm doing. Before it was too small, but now it's even worse because the blocks are so much bigger. I'm just adding a lot of water so it can flow together. Then the blue. I've got to try and avoid letting the wet paint touch the other wet paint, otherwise we'll have a mess on our hands. And some more water. I'm trying to drag the red into the blue rather than the blue into the red because it just takes over so quickly. Like I said, this brush is a bit too small to do what I want to do as fast as I want to do it. But hopefully that will do. At least you guys get an idea of what I'm trying to explain. Now, Daniel Smith, Mayan Yellow. Now, Pyrrole Red. Let's put some water on this and let it do its thing. I have to say this Mayan Yellow really is quite a weak color, or at least it goes from very vibrant to very washed out very quickly. So I'm constantly having to add more to my palette. Now the blue shows up beautifully on this paper. spent so much time trying to blend that bottom bit that I let the top red edge dry. That looks really good to me. It's making these cool little finger shapes, which I quite like, but I know not everyone does, but yeah, I like them. Put some water down and let that do its thing. Now the schminker, yellow. Sometimes using a pipette to deliver water straight onto your paper is quicker than bringing it over with your brush. Red. Paper keeps moving and I don't want to stick my fingers right onto the paint. Add some water here to do its thing, and then finally the blue. Gonna add some more red in this area. And then I think we can call this done. Okay, we're back. It's the next day, the light's good, and we can now have a look at the results of our experiment yesterday. So first up, the printer paper. This is how the Pritt performed. This is very clearly the dullest and the worst of all the results. You can see the paper that got damaged, the rolls of paper fiber showing up clearly where the bad brush was used. The mid brush had a similar result but not as drastic. There are still some bits of paper that got dug up by the brush, but the softer brush, in other words the natural bristle brush, actually performed the best, but still the color is very, very dull. You can clearly see that when you look at the Cotman right below it. Danelle Smith also, I mean, this bad brush just really did a number on the paper. It's quite bad. And furthermore, you can see how the paint bled through and how buckled and crunchy this paper is. Please never use this kind of paper for painting. You'll just frustrate yourself. So the colors are very vibrant on the bottom three paints, though the Cotman will not be as light fast as the Danelle Smith or the Schminker. Next up is the Cass Arts wood pulp 300 gram paper. You can clearly see the difference in color from this paper to this paper. How much better even the worst paint with the worst brush looks. The sizing and the paper weight has made quite a difference. The Pritt still performs poorly color wise on both papers, but it's already a lot better on this one. So the Cotman, Danelle Smith and Schminker, again, the color is more vibrant. You can clearly see that here. The colors on this page don't blend into each other completely smoothly, but that's just the nature of watercolor. I mean, I didn't start off this exercise thinking my washes were going to look perfect. I mean, this where the paper buckled and the water pooled, you'll get these cauliflower or bloom effects. I quite like this though. Very nice. So you can see this paper is also buckled, but there was no bleed through on the back. And if you compare these two papers top down, you will see this one looks much worse. There's just such a big difference when you use the right paper. Then, the Bockingford, I mean, just look at the difference. Even this crappy paint looks 100 times more vibrant on this paper. You can see a little bit of a difference in the other colors as well, though, because the paint's quite good. The difference is not as drastic as with the Pritt. Furthermore, you see less streakiness on this paper, and you don't see any little balls of paper from the surface of the paper that got damaged. Then finally, the base paper I own, and just look at this difference. I don't know if it shows up well on camera, but in person, even jumping from the Cas Arts, the color is already way more vibrant and it behaved so much better on the page. Even the Bockingford, it is more vibrant than the Bockingford. And if you look at the papers top down, there is almost no buckling. There is a slight little bit of buckling, but I mean, comparing these two, the difference is incredible. That's why I love working with heavy paper so much. When I was painting, it did make a couple of little, you know, hills and valleys, but it was really, really very gentle and not very noticeable at all. Now that it's dry, I mean, it's as good as flat. You would hardly have to press this before handing it in for framing. So, comparing the brush types, here is the worst paint on the worst paper with the worst brush. And here is the best brush, the best paint, and the best paper. And just look at that difference. It's incredible. The colors went down more smoothly. Even with the crunchy gross brush and the worst paint, you still, I mean, this actually looks like watercolor now. If I showed you this and this, you wouldn't even be able to say that it's the same paint. That's how big of a difference it makes. So here is the worst paint with a good brush on good paper compared to the worst of the worst. So you see, even if your paint is kind of crappy, if you have the right paper, it will do the paint so much more justice. In all of these, the Cotman looks quite vibrant. So you understand what I mean when I say there's no need to splash out on super fancy paint supplies. Right off the bat, you can achieve beautiful vibrant colors just with the student grade paint, and you can quite happily just use that until you decide that you want to take the plunge and buy very expensive but lovely paints for yourself. One last look. The worst paper, medium range paper, slightly higher end paper, and excellent paper. The color difference is immense. Thank you so much for joining me for this demo. I'm very glad I was able to use my day constructively, and I'm even more glad if this helped someone figure out what art supplies to buy or what art supplies to avoid. Maybe some mistakes you were making that you weren't sure why your paintings were turning out a specific way. If it helped you, please give it a thumbs up. If you found it useful, maybe share it around. Send people here if you think they might find some use in this video. And yeah, just generally, please go out and experiment more, have fun. Paint and see what works, what doesn't work, find your groove, and just enjoy the journey of painting, man. It's exciting and a lot of fun. Thank you. Bye.